You're listening to The Quad, a Killjoys podcast. My name is Annie.
And I'm Chris.
And I'm Stephanie. We're talking about the Season 2 finale of Killjoys, How to Kill Friends and Influence People, though I think we plan to do neither in this episode. We will talk about anything and everything from the finale, but there won't be any spoilers for future episodes because we know nothing about Season 3 yet.
So let's get started with our quick reviews. I liked this episode. I thought it had a lot of really good emotional moments and great Johnny and Dutch stuff. I like how it bookended the episode, and I really like Klein's death scene. I thought it was really unexpectedly emotional, and I just kept watching it going, wow, what a transition the audience has had to go through. This character we thought was a big bad initially that we love to hate, to have him go out in such an emotional way between him and Dutch, I thought was really effective. And, of course, I loved all the humor with Lucy and the dogfight scene, which was amazing special effects. And it was great to see Rick Howland and Stephanie Leonidas in their guest roles. So, looking forward to the trouble that Dutch is going to stir up next season.
Yeah, I liked this episode too, but it didn't feel particularly season finale-ish to me. I don't know, maybe because they didn't actually confront a big bad figure. Not really. I don't know, it just did not quite feel like a season finale. And it was quite heavy on the exposition. We were getting just a lot of information trying to tie up the very mythology denseness of this season. But I thought Johnny's arc in the episode was well done, and Davin paired with Fancy was, of course, a whole lot of fun to watch. And like Andy mentioned, I was super excited to see Rick Howland from Lost Girl guest starring. Woo! More Lost Girl guest stars! And I liked seeing the return of Stephanie Leonidas as Clara. So what did you think, Chris?
I liked the episode, but it wasn't terribly satisfying to me as a season finale. That said, I liked a lot of the beats of this episode, mostly the ones that both of you mentioned already. I'm glad that Dutch got a little bit of closure about Klein. And, there were Dutch and Johnny hugs, so I'm good.
Yeah, there were some nice, satisfying emotional moments, but yeah, it didn't quite feel like a season finale. I don't know.
Because, there's some closure, but it's really not closure about the stuff that's been going on all season, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, this season, I think, in its entirety to me, has been less satisfying as, a cohesive whole. Season 1 was just so satisfying as a cohesive whole. Looking at Season 2, it reminds me a bit of, like you were mentioning before we started recording, it does remind me of Orphan Black Season 3, where it feels like, okay, here's this information that you need to have, but we're kind of in a middle ground trying to get from one piece of our series-long arc to the next piece of our series-long arc.
It's like we're unfolding the world and the bigger picture here, but it feels all very transitional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I got a little of that. Information was doled out kind of sparingly throughout the season about the green goo and the meaning of it and Arkin and everything, and then we're just kind of like, okay, but still at the end. But wait, we've only gotten rid of the green goo on Arkin, and really there's, we still don't know everything about Anila and this whole armada she suddenly has. But I did like Dutch's determination of, well, we're not just going to win a battle, I want a war, so that kind of got me excited. I was like, oh, that's very Dutch, and so that's why I was kind of looking forward to her just going, okay, we're not just going to stop here. I mean, I like the beat it ended on.
That's a transitional thing, though, is what I'm saying, is it's all...
I know, but I didn't mind it as much, so...
Okay.
That's just me.
Let's talk about Klein and his death, because I feel very conflicted about his death here in this episode. On the one hand, Dutch finally, I think, has an answer about him, that he was well-intentioned toward her, though she still has very conflicted feelings about what he did. But maybe, and he was a really interesting figure in the show, I thought, so I'm sad to see him go, but I also can see how maybe he might have reached an expiration date. I don't know, what did y'all think about the choice to go ahead and kill Klein? Let's start with you, Chris.
I'm not terribly broken up about it, but at the same time, he has been such a major figure in the show that, I don't know, it was unexpected for me that they actually killed him off. And that they did it, approximately mid-episode. I don't know. Because as I mentioned before, there is some closure for Dutch there, but like, I don't know if it's enough, you know? I still have, I just,
Annie, what did you think about Klein dying in this episode?
Well, it was a little unexpected, but at the same time, I mean, I like how, even in that last scene, Dutch's feelings about Klein sacrificing himself for her, and that she was conflicted about it till the very end. She was like, what did she say? You know, you a-hole, you don't get to say you love me. But at the same time, she's crying over him dying, and, you know, this father figure in a twisted way that was the only one she had, even though he revealed it through terrible means. But yeah, I thought it was such good acting in that scene, and I really, you know, love the callback to the story they told at the beginning of the episode. But I was just watching going, oh my God, you know, we've seen him as the big bad, and to see him end at this transition where I'm sad to see him go and Dutch is sad to see him go, or a part of her is. I just thought it was a really powerful scene. But at the same time, it's messy. She's not going to get all the answers and resolve all her feelings about him, and she's going to continue to be conflicted about him, and I let that just tracks with what Johnny said. It's okay to hate him, but to miss him at the same time, essentially. But, I was like, well, is he dead? I think he's dead, but...
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'll miss that character, because he was such an interesting counterpoint. But at the same time, I think the season did a good job of tracking how, you know, first Davin and then Dutch's feelings toward Klein, how she didn't see him as just so black and white, just as the enemy changed over the season. So for Dutch to be still conflicted about Klein sacrificing himself for her, but at the same time sad to see him go, I thought just emotionally made sense.
I can see where it could have been interesting to keep him around longer, where Dutch was trying to be more trusting of him, because while we've seen this season her kind of come to accept that she's not entirely sure if he's her enemy, we haven't seen them interact all that much where she's trying to work with him and think of him as somebody who doesn't just want to capture her and hold her against her will and that sort of thing. This was really the first episode where we got to see them do that. So I could see where it could have been interesting for him to stick around longer with her having kinder feelings toward him. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, he's been used as this big menace in the show, and I do feel like this season has neutralized him in that way. So I can see the wisdom of, or the, maybe not the wisdom, but the logic of having him sacrifice himself for her at this point to sort of prove once and for all, like, I did really care about you above all. And for her to be able to at least have some closure around that, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know if that, I don't know how to feel about that in and of itself, even, just because it kind of makes you inclined to to want to have warmer feelings to him, but he did some really terrible, messed up stuff to Dutch.
He did.
Yeah.
And so
but I do think that they preserved that complicated aspect of the relationship, even though he did sacrifice himself. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think it was a good balance, Stephanie.
But I like you were saying, Chris, I feel conflicted about him dying, because it does feel like, I could see some potential still there for that character. However, I can see why they chose to do that. So I don't know. I didn't dislike the decision to kill him. I'm just not entirely sure how to feel about it quite yet.
Well, because I think part of my reluctance about the whole thing is we just found out about Klein's origins.
Right.
And now we won't probably get to explore that any further. I mean, not that there's necessarily a lot of stuff that a lot of story that they'd build around that, but, you know, it just feels like that opportunity is gone now.
Right. And that did really cast him in a very benevolent light, that he discovered the plasma and its ill effects because he was trying to feed a planet of people who presumably didn't have enough food. But
he already had his little Blackroot symbol on his outfit, so I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Probably because the Blackroot emerged from that original project staff. They were the ones who originally infected with the green goo, and they've become Anila's henchmen on the quest for more and more plasma to create more and more people to induct. I don't know. What's the word? I guess make people Hullen.
But I'm just saying, like, was Blackroot an established thing that was doing something else that then turned into this, or did it grow out of that? I have questions.
Well, I have a feeling we might get more answers about Blackroot and their development through Anila next season. Maybe I'm wrong. But let's talk a little bit about Dutch and her journey in this episode. Like you were saying, Annie, the episode ends and it's just Dutch is still really conflicted about Klein. And I really love that scene between her and Johnny. And I really love the fact that in that scene, she even pointed out that, like, Johnny, I recognize that you've been through something painful, and yet you're still managing to be a shoulder for me to cry on. It just was such a nice scene for them to bookend the season, I thought.
Yeah, I know. And especially in contrast to the scene with them earlier, where she's being a shoulder for him, and she's saying, if you want to leave, if you want to go anywhere, we will. And I was just like, oh, Dutch. So, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, basically echoing back to him what he said to her in the first season.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I didn't make that connection at the time, but yeah, that's absolutely what he said to her when she told him about Klein and that situation.
Yep. If you want to run, I call shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
It's what he said.
But I love that even though Klein died, doing something nice for Dutch, they didn't try to uncomplicate her feelings for him.
Yeah, and that's smart writing, I think.
Yeah. While like the plot mechanics of this episode didn't feel as season finale-ish to me, it did feel like there was some character stuff in this episode that did feel very season finale-ish to me, and so that worked for me. The kind of processing that she went through in regards to Klein and her emotions toward him.
Right. Which is something we've talked about before, that this show is really more characters first before plot. So I do appreciate that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if some of the plot choices made me go, wait, what?
Yeah. And I have to say that Hannah John Common is a really good crier in that scene with Klein.
She is. She just, like, some actors, it's like
Poured
maybe a little tear or two. No, she's just I was like, gushing.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of added to the whole effect I felt about that scene. And it was interesting. I was thinking now, just kind of it has a double meaning when she kept repeating he's gone to Davin. Not just that he's dead, but this influence that I have in my life, whether I love him or hate him, it's gone. I held on to it for so long. And yeah.
Right. Because earlier in the season, she was saying that her hatred of him was sort of what really guided her and sort of was
what her
solid
world revolved around. Yeah.
Exactly. And even though that became troubled and she wasn't sure how to feel about him, like, now he's just absolutely gone. So the idea that Klein's gone and Johnny, let's talk about Johnny, is gone too again. Like, Johnny.
I was going to say, this is a perfect opportunity for a segue, because what are you doing, Johnny?
Not good for you to go off.
Did you learn nothing from the Old Town incident? You need to tell Dutch and Davin when you're going to do dangerous stuff.
At least Lucy knew, and, because she figured it out for herself, because he didn't tell her either.
Mm-hmm.
That jerk. I love you, Johnny, but come on.
I know. I'm like, Johnny, you don't think they're going to come after you? You don't think they're going to be worried? You don't think Lucy's going to tell him? At least she got Clara to be a wing woman.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, if there's one good thing to come of this, it's that Clara came back.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo! With Alice.
Mm-hmm.
And I did read an interview with Michelle Lovretta after the episode aired, and she said she really fought for Stephanie Leonidas to come back. And I'm like, woohoo! So I appreciate that.
What do you mean she had to fight for her to come back? Like, they set her up in the first episode she appeared in to come back. Come on, sci-fi.
So she must have been very pleased with herself after the first episode aired.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of fandom was like, bring her back! We want more!
Well, because she was on Defiance, and I know Defiance got canceled, but I recall her character being pretty popular over there. People seem to like her, so
yeah.
Come on, sci-fi. Give us more Stephanie Leonidas.
But I do hope there's more Johnny and Lucy sometime in season 3, because that whole scene where basically, I read some tweets about it, where Michelle Lovretta was like, she said, oh, if you recalled me tweeting at the beginning of the season or, several months before where I tweeted Aaron Ashmore, she's like, I just wrote a scene that made me cry. And that was the scene where she was talking about when Johnny's talking to Lucy, which was pretty amazing since Aaron Ashmore had to act against nothing. And then,
just a woman or person reading the lines off screen. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Tamsin has to voice it months later. So yeah, but I was like, oh, that gave me feels.
That was a really good scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And especially where Johnny says, I don't even know why I did it or how to feel about what I did. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And then Lucy's like, did I do something? I'm like, oh, Lucy. No, it wasn't you. Especially after their whole, Top Gun dogfight where the quote is, we're going to buzz the tower, girl. Negative, Johnny. The pattern is full. That's from Top Gun. But
I had no idea what she said and what they were talking about.
Yeah, captioning.
Same.
But that was an awesome.
I can't watch it with the
fight.
Captions. I get distracted from the plot, and I realize I don't know what's going on.
Well,
so I'd rather miss a line or two than the entire plot thread.
Well, yeah, but that was an awesome dogfight scene. So to go from that to them saying goodbye, I was just like, oh. So yeah, the two extremes.
I liked her calling him out on his silly fight pattern name. What was it? It was like Blue.
Yeah. You need better code names or something.
Blue Huckleberry? I can't remember what it was.
Blueberry Foxtrot.
Blueberry Foxtrot. That's right.
But I was like afraid Lucy was going to get shot up or really damaged. I'm like, duh. So yeah, I was glad she made it through that. But yeah, that was a lot of guns. But
and it felt like she had a callback to her, I'm a spaceship, John, in that scene, because he made a reference to her putting on her dancing shoes, and she repeated, I don't have feet, I'm a ship. But then she understood later on that he was making a joke.
AI progression of, intelligence. This time she got the joke.
Lucy had a character arc.
Mm-hmm. She did.
I just, I get it. You reference now. You were making a joke, John. You're funny.
In the middle of all this, guns firing at them, he's like, oh, I don't need your pity.
Or maybe it was very humorous, John, or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was amusing.
Yeah, it was great.
You were also humorous, Lucy.
I thought the confrontation that Johnny finally had with Dulcea was an interesting choice on the writer's part, because I think, when it's like, oh, he's confronting the woman who killed the woman he loves, you expect it to be more angry, more something.
Yeah.
But it was just so quiet and calculated. But that I felt like it was very Johnny. Like, of course, that's how he would approach it.
Yeah. John's not an explosive anger kind of guy, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's almost like he felt like he needed to do this thing because it was almost... He didn't really understand why he needed to do it, kind of what he said to Lucy later on. But it was just such a strange revenge scene, really.
Almost like that's what you'd expect the person to do towards the person that killed the one you loved. He just says, I just loved her. That he goes, I'm not killing you for this reason or that reason. It's just my own personal thing.
And the way that Aaron Ashmore played it, where after he shoots her, he looks at his gun and he looks at her almost like I couldn't tell what was quite going through his head. Like, he didn't expect it to be that easy, or he didn't know how to feel about it afterward. Maybe that's what he was trying to convey, because that's what he does say later on. But yeah, it was just a very strange, quiet little scene. But I don't know. I feel like I liked it. I think.
Yeah. Well, again, it's not something he'd normally do or, even know how to do. But it's just extraordinary circumstances pushed him to do that thing, and he's not sure about it.
Yeah, I'm similarly ambivalent about it, I guess. Because I didn't want it to happen. Like, I thought it probably would, but I think partly because I thought it was probably going to happen, I was kind of like, I don't want it to.
Want it to happen? Well, I can understand that. I agree that it felt expected. But again, I feel like they did it in a way that was different and not typical. Therefore, I didn't mind that they did it even though it was expected.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. But I do think that if we're going to use your deserved it or not scale, Chris, I think that Dulcea deserved it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think
sure.
she deserved it.
Of course. Because grr, Dulcea.
Yeah. Again, so not into hate flirting with you and Dutch anymore.
You say that now. If it started up again, you'd be
cute
so
as
into
is.
it.
Yeah. I'm like attracted to it and repelled by it at the same time. Yeah. So right, yet so wrong.
You're having a hate flirting relationship with their hate flirting?
Yes, I am. Wow, that's a double entendre. But
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I feel like we're gonna read some and hear some feedback from people a little bit later on. But both of the feedback that we got from folks, they both mentioned thinking that Dulcea was dead or that Dulcea wasn't going to come back. And that was not my impression of that scene. I just thought Johnny shot her, not that he had killed her.
Well, it's a sci-fi trope. You know, we're like, she's not dead until we see a body.
Right.
You know, a review I read, they're like, Johnny, don't you know to check the bodies, see if they're dead? Before you go off?
I don't know that he actually meant to kill her. I think he felt
That's
like he needed to do something. Because if he wanted to kill her, he could have easily done that. He could have shot her in the head.
Yeah.
You know, she was on the ground. She didn't seem to have a weapon. He could have shot her in the head. So I don't think his ultimate goal was necessarily to kill her.
Because it seems like he shot her in the stomach or something, right?
Yes.
Well,
yeah,
still,
he shot her in the...
very fatal wound if she doesn't get help soon.
But that's the slow way to die.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it felt like he was saying, if that's the end of you, good riddance, but you have a fighting chance. That's kind of my impression of why he did it the way that he did it, rather than going in for a kill shot the way that, say, Davin would have.
But regardless, he knows he's going to be pursued no matter what happens, which is why he had to leave. Yeah.
And that's what even makes me think that he didn't intend to kill her, because he knew there were people going to come after him. I mean, granted, there's probably security cameras and stuff, but it almost felt like he knew Dulcea would be able to go tell somebody before she died.
Yeah.
Or if she died at all. I don't think she died, because she was still alive when the scene ended.
Her love for Dutch will keep her alive. Her hate flirting. The thought of hate flirting with Dutch will keep her going. And watch, it'll be like Dutch that saves her. And a new hate flirt relationship will be born.
She must live to snap.
Do it. Say it again, Chris. Say it in that. I love it when you impersonate that line or do the impression of that
terribly. It's so insufficiently.
So
You must be one hell of a snapper.
But it's more like snapper.
Snapper.
One hell of a snapper. I'm amused by Annie's amusement.
She has to live to snap.
You really tickled Annie.
You did.
Well, since we're talking about hate flirting, shall we talk a little bit about Davin and Fancy Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry, I'll tell them you died sexy.
Yeah. Well, how do you die sexy? You just fall to the ground going.
But again, this week I felt like Davin didn't have as much, emotional plotline stuff going on, but we saw that he has continued to kind of hone his anti-green goo ability, because he was like choking Fancy Lee and not making his eyes explode, but making like the green goo come out of his mouth.
It's true.
Yeah, and
be more explodey. I love how there's a Y and added on the end of everything.
But I love the antagonism between the two of them. They make a great pair. I'm so glad that Fancy Lee got, well, he didn't have to be D6'd in order to be partnered with them. So I'll just say that I'm glad Fancy Lee seems to be kind of back with the gang and maybe partnering with them in the next season.
I'm just glad he's not dead, so.
Yeah. Yay,
Right.
Fancy Lee's not dead, because we were worried about him at this time last season.
Yep. Yay. Yeah, he got turned into a 6 at the end of last season. He got D6'd at the end of this season. What's going to happen to him at the end of season 3?
He's going to become a 12. Oh, I did like that line. You're a 6, not a 10.
Simmer down.
That was a good line. That was a very good line.
And it's like, you're talking to Davin, who can control the green goo, so you'd better simmer down, because he can make your eyes go explodey if he wants to.
And of course, Davin using him as a human shield was pretty great.
Except I don't know how Davin could forget, in the middle of all that. I forgot. Nothing short of brain death can kill you. And I'm like, how could you forget? You've been surrounded by 6s all season.
Well, but he's probably thinking military tactics of, you stay down and you try to shoot people. Anyway, let's not get into it. We're trying to keep it short.
I mean, that's not like your go-to strategy is like, I'll use my comrade as
a human shield. Exactly.
Like, your brain doesn't go there normally.
No.
Or most people's don't, I would hope.
Unless you have a snarky comrade that you hate flirt with, yeah. That happens to be a 6.
But speaking of good pairings, I also really loved the exchange between Klein and Seraphin, who was Rick Howland's character, where Klein kind of leans into him and says, I don't think there'd be any point in killing you, right? He's like, oh no, I would not advise that. I have a bomb strapped to my chest.
Tea?
And he's just like, tea? No, thank you.
And
Meanwhile,
he just
Dutch is
spends the rest
fighting.
of the episode just casually drinking tea at his desk.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how in the middle of that, Dutch is fighting and Klein's just watching her casually. And Dutch is like, you a-hole, get over here. It's like, okay, fine.
When Klein was kind of bragging on Dutch to Seraphin, saying, oh, she's pretty impressive, I kind of wanted him to come back and say, like, she reminds me of my granddaughter, actually.
Which, to anyone listening who does not know, is a Lost Girl reference.
Girl reference. But I don't think they'll bring Rick Howland back, though he was still alive at the end of the episode. I'd love to see him back. I love Rick. I think he's great.
Well, it was so funny when he was first on screen. I forgot that he was in the episode because I watched this episode about a week late. And I was like, it's Rick. So it took me a minute.
Before we get into feedback, let's wrap up with questions that are lingering after this episode. Anybody want to start us off?
So towards the end of the episode, we get a glimpse of Vanilla. Was she drinking the green goo or was she drinking algae beer?
That's a joke, right, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm like 90% joking, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
It looked like algae beer, that's all I'm saying.
No, it was bright green plasma. That's too bright to be algae
Maybe
beer.
I need to adjust the tint on my TV because it looks
You do.
darker green to me.
Well, I think that's the most green goo we've seen, because usually we see them in kind of little vials or in tubes, so maybe just the color of it changes when it's more concentrated.
I'm just saying, it looked like the algae beer from season 1. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. That's fair. There's a reason I think they stopped showing them drink the algae beer.
Because it was getting in the actor's teeth, yes.
Teeth, yes. Anila seemed to be doing okay, but who knows? She didn't smile afterward, I don't think. And speaking of Anila, they reaffirmed in this episode, we still don't know why Dutch looks like her. So we still have this question of, is she her kid? Is she a clone? Is it a coincidence? It's probably not a coincidence.
Nope.
So they do still have that dangling out there to answer with season 3.
I did have to say, I really like that shot of Anila's armada and the set design and everything of Anila walking down that white set. I thought that was very striking.
Can we keep calling her Double Dutch, though? I just love calling her Double Dutch.
Yeah, Double Dutch is cool.
Sure. I like that Johnny called her Other Dutch in this episode.
I know. I was hoping, actually, he might take the opportunity to call her Double Dutch, but I did like Other Dutch. And then I had a question about the end of that scene between Johnny and Dulcea, because, he shoots her, he leaves, and it shows her sitting on the ground, holding her wound, and she kind of smiles to herself. What does that smile mean? It feels like, it's like, does she know something about Potter that she's not telling? Is she just smiling because it's like, oh, the game's afoot type of a smile? I'm going to have so much fun coming after you and finding you and killing you. Ha ha. Like, what does that smile mean?
Maybe she just wants to hate flirt with all the Killjoys now.
She's like, okay, I deserve that. Like, what does that smile mean?
To me, it was just such a Dulcea kind of thing to do, though. She's like,
it's true.
I have to go back and watch it
like
again.
she would be vaguely amused by this turn of events. Like,
Because she clearly did not interpret Johnny's presence as a threat in the least. I mean, she was just kind of annoyed, like, oh, what are you doing here? Instead of Klein. So maybe that's why it's just like, oh, hey, look, he did find some gumption to shoot me. Good for him.
Haven't you ever had one of those moments where you're so sort of annoyed and disbelieving that you smile to yourself?
I guess.
Because I've done that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting how Klein was talking about how the history of the ancestors of the Nine, that was the deal they made with his people to take all the wealth of the Quad and they would get eventual longevity or be sixed. So, but I was wondering, was she smiling because she was already secretly sixed at that point and would be fine? But I doubt it with the context of the conversation she had with who she thought was Klein, but...
Yeah, because the way that she was talking to Klein earlier, it sounded like
the deal hadn't been made. They had, yeah.
Exactly. And since they did the thing to the tree and it kind of supposedly made Blackroot and Double Dutch turn around, I don't think they ever made it to the Quad in order to turn them into sixes. So I don't think she was. That's a good point, though. She might have been. But I feel like even if she had been, it would have been done with goo from Arkin, which was...
Yeah.
negated.
It's the only available goo around that we know of.
Yeah.
Though they did say there were other sources in other parts of the J.
Yeah.
We wanted to share a couple of pieces of feedback we got from listeners. The following email is from Molly, and Molly said, "Oh goodness, was I so glad to see the tag for returns in 2017 at the end of the episode, because you cannot leave it like that. Is Anila the big bad of the series? Is she drinking plasma? Yes, we think so, not algabeer. How many warships does she command, and how does she control them? Do you guys think that the Hullen first bonded with those on Arkin, or were there others before? The Nanite guy said invaders came, so were those Hullen?"
That was my impression.
I do think they are supposed to be Hullen. When in the scheme of all of this that happened, I don't know, because Klein makes it sound like he's the first. But, like, is he the first here, or is he the first overall? I don't know. I still have questions about all of that.
Well, and he clearly was bonded to... Well, I shouldn't say clearly. He seemed to be bonded to a plasma that did not come from Arkin, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Did you think that? Because...
No, that was my impression that it came from
It was your impression
Arkin.
it came from Arkin? Okay, never mind. I'll take that back. That's true, because he wasn't alive after the tree was killed, so who knows. Yeah, I'm unclear about the timeline. I think maybe it was supposed to be that they were on Arkin when they were doing the tree research, because that's where we saw where the monks came and stole the tree. But definitely the invaders who came to Sam Romwell's planet, those I think are most definitely supposed to have been Hullen. Molly continues and says, "I was super happy to see Clara come back at the end to run off with Johnny for a while, in the scene with Johnny and Dutch still being best friends and commiserating in grief. Fancy/Davin hate flirting is always wonderful, especially since we won't have Dulcea anymore. However, I think we'll be back. We'll see if there's hate flirting, though. She did deserve that shot in the gut, and I did not think the message was Johnny until he told her. I'm a little sad to see Klein go, but he did go about as far as he could, and now Dutch needs to be on her own to fight. If they are leaving the Quad again, those credits are going to have to change yet again."
And then we also got this voicemail from Ronnie.
Hey, Chris, Annie, and Stephanie. This is Ronnie from Vegas, and it's been way too long, and I was unfortunately not able to make DragonCon this year, so I said I gotta at least leave a message now that we're on the last episode of Killjoys for this season. And I do have to admit, I'm conflicted about this last episode. I love the way that it ended with Johnny and Clara heading off on their own. I think it makes really good conflict for the third season, and I also think it's really good that we did, get confirmation at the end of the episode that there will be a third season. Yay! But I do have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed. I felt like, one, we've already had enough killing this season, so to kill off Klein, to me, just didn't make sense with all the build-up and what they need to conquer next season. And also, I thought it was just too convenient the way Johnny was able to kill Dulcea. book. So, like I said, I like the way the episode ended, but overall, I think actually this whole season, I like the first season better. So it'll be interesting to hear your podcast to see what you think about this last episode. And what was nice is I did get to rewatch Meet the Parents, which is actually my favorite episode of this season. I really loved the episode and, with all the different parents and the different drama in that episode. And I loved the body swap that they did in that episode. I thought that went so well.
Thanks for sending that in, Ronnie. As you may have guessed, I think we pretty much feel the same way you do.
We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode of Killjoys. You can send them to killjoys@askgenretv.com. We love getting voice messages like Ronnie sent us, and you can send us those in a couple of ways. Record a voice memo on your smartphone and email it to us, or call our listener voicemail line at 972-514-7223. Follow us on Twitter or Tumblr at Killjoys Podcast.
The Quad is part of the Ask Genre TV family of podcasts. To find our other podcasts about Orphan Black and Lost Girl and some other shows, you can visit our website, askgenretv.com.
Thanks for listening. See you in the Quad.